Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 21st chapter. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus said, "Listen to another parable. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard, put a fence around it, dug a winepress in it, and built a watchtower. Then he leased it to tenants and went to another country. When the harvest time had come, he sent his slaves to the tenants to collect his produce. But the tenants seized his slaves and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again, he sent other slaves more than the first, and they treated them in the same way. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, 'They will respect my son.' But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, 'This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and get his inheritance.' So they seized him, threw him out of the vineyard, and killed him. Now when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants?" They said to him, "He will put those wretches to a miserable death and lease the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the produce at the harvest time." Jesus said to them, "Have you never read in the Scriptures, 'The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone'? This was the Lord's doing, and it is amazing in our eyes. Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people that produces the fruits of the kingdom. The one who falls on this stone will be broken into pieces, and it will crush anyone on whom it falls." When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard this parable, they realized that he was speaking about them. They wanted to arrest him, but they feared the crowds because they regarded him as a prophet. The Gospel of the Lord. So Tuesday was my last full day of vacation in Germany, and I had the opportunity again to visit the Wartburg Castle. If you have not been to the Wartburg Castle, and you have the opportunity sometime if you're in Germany, you should do that. If for no other reason, then the Wartburg Castle is the stereotypical castle that all Americans think a castle should look like. It is a great big stone fortress up on top of a hill, which has a big wall and a moat around it, or a dry moat around it, and a drawbridge, and a great big tower that you can climb, and you get fantastic views when you go up there. And because it was so secure and so safe, that was the castle where Martin Luther hid out in 1521 and 1522, when the Holy Roman Emperor wanted to put him to death. So while Luther was there in the Wartburg, and he had nothing else to do, he took the Hebrew and the Greek texts of the Bible, and he translated them into German. So for the very first time, people who were German were able to read the Bible in their own languages. So when you go to the Wartburg today, you can visit the room and see the place where Luther translated the Bible. And when you go into the ticket office to buy the ticket for the tour, you can have the opportunity to see all kinds of Luther paraphernalia, which you can buy as a souvenir. I did not buy any. But as I was looking around at all of this stuff, I noticed a certain postcard. There were a whole bunch of postcards that had various Luther sayings on them. And one of them kind of caught my eye. And maybe that was because I was thinking a little bit about the gospel reading for today. And it was a saying of Martin Luther that I don't ever remember hearing before. And it translates from German roughly as, "The devil lurks behind the question, will I have enough? Will I have enough?" Like, it's an important question, right? We ask it all the time, every single day. Will I have enough money to pay the bills? Or put my kids through school? Or to retire? Will I have enough time to do all the things on my to-do list for this week or this month, to get everything done that I'm supposed to do at work? Will I have enough? And will I even have enough energy and stamina left at the end of the day to be able to go home and share love and care with people who are my family and my friends, and not just be so exhausted that I have to sit there and go, I've had enough? Will I have enough? It's an important question. And I think Luther said that because he recognized that the questions that can often become demonic in our lives are not the silly questions, the dumb questions, the trivial questions. Instead, They're the important questions. The ones that everybody says, yeah, that's an important thing you ought to think about. But sometimes the devil lurks behind these questions because the questions so fill our minds and our hearts that we become so distracted we can't think about anything else. That we become so afraid that we're paralyzed. So that even if we're able to do something, we end up doing crazy, wild, irrational things because we're consumed by that question, will I have enough? I think I noticed that saying because I get the sense that that's really what's behind today's gospel reading. When Jesus tells this parable, he makes up this story about these tenants in the vineyard and how when the landowner says, hey, pay the rent, they behave in all kinds of crazy, bizarre, irrational ways. What Jesus is wanting people to do is not simply to sit there and go, oh, what a bunch of rat things those people are to behave so badly. Or even, what a bunch of nasty people the scribes and the Pharisees and the chief priests are, because people thought that anyway. That's no reason Jesus needs to make up this parable for that reason. Instead, I think Jesus really wants us to be able to kind of look at this parable and go, wow, people behave in really crazy, irrational, goofy ways. Why? What was behind it? You know, sometimes when we read stories in the Bible, the reason that people behave in certain ways is because we don't quite understand the culture or the history or something. But in no way, shape, or form, even in Jesus' culture 2,000 years ago, would beating up and killing people who came to collect the rent work out well for you. It just wasn't going to happen. And that's why when Jesus says this parable to his first hearers, they go, oh my gosh, what's going to happen when he comes? He's going to kill them and it's going to be terrible. Why would people behave like this? And I think what Jesus is asking us to do is to consider that question, why? I suspect that what's behind these folks, these hypothetical people in the vineyard, is that they also are consumed by this question, will I have enough? Will I have enough to pay the rent? Will I have enough to have enough left over for me? Will I have enough for the future? Those questions are not bad questions, but they so consume the people in this parable that they become distracted from everything else. They can't figure out, they can't see anymore that the landowner is actually invested in their future, is actually invested in them. See, what is different in the way that Jesus tells this story from the way that normally the tenant and landowner relationship worked, is that usually in Jesus' day, if a landowner owned the land, you just owned the land because you had inherited it, and it's mine, and then I lease it to you, and good luck to you, but you owe me rent, and I don't care whether you're doing well or not, I just want what's mine. But this landowner is different. He actually plants the vineyard for the tenants. He puts a wall around it, so it's protected from the wild animals that come through and eat all the grapes. He builds a watchtower so that folks can watch out for invading armies and things like that. He even digs a wine press in it so that the tenants are set to be able to take the produce, make the wine. This landowner is invested in the future of the tenants. But the tenants become so obsessed with this question of, will I have enough, that they can't see that anymore. They forget about it. They completely miss it. Because sometimes when the good questions become demonic in our lives, we get so distracted we can't really see what's happening around us. So then, these tenants, they become so obsessed with, will I have enough, that they're afraid that if they give up even a little bit of it, they won't have enough. Jesus never says in this parable how much the vineyard has produced. He doesn't say it's produced abundantly or whatever, but clearly it has, because the tenants are willing to fight for it and kill for it. It's that good. So if it's that good, they actually have a huge abundance. But when you become so obsessed with the question of, will I have enough, you can never appreciate what you actually have. You're all tied up in the question of how little I have, or do I have enough for tomorrow, or whatever. You become so consumed with fear that no matter what you have, it doesn't look like it's enough. And so these tenants then go and behave in absolutely evil, horrible, but irrational ways. Let's kill this guy. Let's stone this guy. Let's beat this guy up. And you go and Jesus' first hearer said, this can't possibly help. It can't work. In fact, it works against the future that both the landowner and the tenants want. Why would you do something like that? I know people, a number of folks who are financial planners who have said to me over the years, you would be amazed at the number of people who come to me and they ask me for help in planning for their retirement. And they're afraid that they're not going to have enough. So I tell them certain things that they can do that might help, but I will also tell them, here are certain things that if you do them, I guarantee you will lose money. I guarantee it will go badly for you. If you try to time the market, you pull money out of the stock market until you think it's going to go up and then you shove money back in, I guarantee you, you will lose money. Or if you take a bunch of your money and you go and you play the lottery, because most of you know this, the statistic that says that you have a better chance of being struck by lightning inside your house than you do winning the lottery. But he says, but people go out and they do that stuff. And it's like, why? It's irrational. But people do it. And that's what these tenants are doing. They're doing something completely irrational because they are consumed with this question, will I have enough? So Jesus tells this story. He tells this parable, and what I think Jesus wants us to do is not simply to go looking for people that we can criticize. Criticize the chief priests and the Pharisees. Oh, what bad people they were back in the day. Nor to look around for other people and go, yeah, I think those people are kind of like... Anytime we do that with parables, we're missing the point. I think what Jesus wants us to do is to always ask ourselves, how can really good questions, good important questions in my life, like will I have enough, how can they become demonic? When does the devil lurk behind those questions so that I miss out on all the things God is doing in my life? Because I think that's really the point of this parable. Jesus wants us not to be like the tenants. And in not being like the tenants, he wants us to see God like the landowner. The landowner is actually invested in the lives of the tenants. Constantly, each and every day, because he's provided all of these opportunities. And in fact, you get the sense that he would do anything more if they asked. So often, for us, we end up getting consumed by questions like, will I have enough? Because we get the sense that, well, we're kind of on our own. Even with God, we have this idea that someday when we get to heaven, God will say, so, how'd it go down there? Instead of seeing God as someone who constantly walks with us, helps us, works with us in our lives. That was the first thing that the tenants forgot. They couldn't see how God was actually working with them each and every day. But sometimes when we're able to do that, when we're able to remind ourselves of that, and see that in our lives, how God is actually working with us and helping us, it keeps us from being so consumed with that question, will I have enough? I think it also is important. Jesus also wants us to be folks who actually appreciate the abundance of what we have. And that should really kind of be easy for most of us. But for so many of us, it's always easy to look around and see somebody who has more than I have. I can do that all the time. And I can sit back and say to myself, I actually seem to have a lot more now than maybe I had a few years ago. So now, whatever I have now, that's the new normal, right? So now I'm worried, well, will I have this much later? Or even to kind of wonder, no matter how much I have, will I have enough for tomorrow? Because tomorrow is unknown. And in those kinds of situations, it doesn't matter what I have. it doesn't matter how much abundance God has given to me, I can't appreciate it. What Jesus wants us to do every day is to be able to appreciate the abundance that God has already given to us. And sometimes for us, that happens in a kind of a paradoxical way. It happens when we actually take what we have and we share it with others. We do something good that makes a difference and has meaning in somebody else's life. It seems like, for so many of us, what we want to do is do what I was doing with the kids in the kids' sermon. It's like, maybe I don't have enough yet, so I'll shove it back here, and I'll hold on to it until later when I feel better, and then maybe I'll share it. But sometimes, the way I really recognize how much I have is when I take my money, my time, my energy, and I share it with somebody else. That's when I come to recognize what I have. It's taking something and doing something good with it instead of something evil. Now the tenants are a really drastic example, because that's what happens in parables, of people who take what they have, their opportunity, and they do something evil with it. And I know almost all of you, and I know you would not do anything really evil. You're not going to beat up people or kill people and things like that. But sometimes evil wins when we simply decide to do nothing. When we take what God has given us and we say, I'm going to shove it into a safe someplace, and I'm not going to risk, and I'm not going to do anything with it. That ends up being almost as bad as doing something evil. Because the gifts that God has entrusted me with, that I could do something meaningful with, are instead hidden. And nobody benefits. So will I have enough? Will you have enough? You know, Jesus never says we can't ask that question. But instead, he doesn't want us to be consumed by that question. And I think instead, therefore, Jesus wants us really to kind of look at some other questions. Some other questions that God has already answered yes to. Will God always be walking with you and with me in our lives, participating in our lives, strengthening us and helping us? The answer to that is always yes. Will God always be blessing you and me with an abundance, even when we don't appreciate it, even when we can't see it? The answer to that is yes. Will God always be giving you and me opportunities each day in our lives, even if it's in small ways, to make a difference, a meaningful difference in the lives of somebody else with what we already have? And the answer to that is also yes. And if the answer to all of those questions is yes, then in the end, we really do